I believe in coincidences. Coincidences happen every day. But I don't trust coincidences.
Okay, are we ready?
As ready as it gets.
Okay, perfect. Let's dive in. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the Common Anomaly podcast. I'm your host, Stuart James. Joining me today is Clayton James. How's it going, brother?
I'm doing really well. I'm a little tired of winter. It just keeps coming back.
Yeah, every time we think we're done with it. I hate when we start an episode talking about the weather, but the weather has been particularly bizarre the past week. It's been crazy. It's been so up and down. In the space of 1 hour, it'll be blizzarding, and then the sun will be out. It'll blue skies, and then it'll all happen all over again. And we really thought we were done with it. Like last week, a couple days ago, we had plus 20 degrees Celsius, and now we're back to snow, being under a foot of snow out of nowhere. So yeah, weird stuff going on all over the place. We're doing a quick and dirty episode today, under the wire. We're not back to a weekly schedule. We're trying to get this episode out a week early because we really wanted to talk about this. So it's not going to have maybe all the usual bells and whistles and polish that our episodes normally have. It's going to be a little more raw, a little more live radio-ish. So I'm just going to ask everyone to bear with us and embrace that vibe for this special episode. We really wanted to talk about this quickly evolving story of missing and or dead scientists that have been in the news lately. A lot of them seem to have connections in terms of the fields of work they were involved with, and everybody's blowing up about it, and there's been some recent developments, and we really wanted to cover this. Right last week we were saying, oh, thank God we're not a current event show.
Yeah.
And here we are, the very next episode, covering a current event, an evolving story. But I think it's an important one. I think like a lot of people, the first couple times I heard about this, I kind of waved it off as, they're probably not connected. This is probably all very overblown. But like a lot of things we cover on this show, you just need to scratch a little bit below the surface, and suddenly your eyes perk up and you're like, wait a minute, there really seems like there's something going on here, and we really want to talk about it. So yeah, the whole thing was your idea. So and I've got a theory of my own that I've been developing the past week, so I hope people stick around to the end, because I'm going to save that for the end. But I think I've got a connection here that no one else has really talked about so far, so please stick with us. I really look forward to hearing what you think about it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, why was this so urgent for you to talk about this week on a condensed schedule on my first day of vacation?
Well, I originally started following this story with the story of William McCasland, who we'll talk about in a moment here. I guess and we had talked about doing an episode on this, but the reason I all of a sudden said, no, we've got to release it early, because now this is evolving quickly.
Yeah.
Because it's been an ongoing thing for a couple of years, just quietly building in the background. But then this week, David Wilcock, who most people will know from, he was kind of a staple on the show Ancient Aliens.
Yeah, that's right.
He was on, I think, almost every episode.
Yeah, he was one of the main talking heads on that show. Yeah.
I was never a huge fan of Ancient Aliens. It's entertaining. It's a bit hyperbolic.
Yeah.
It's a bit infotainment.
Yeah.
For me. But it's engaging. It's entertaining to watch once in a while. I first heard of David Wilcock through a book, which I have here today, called The Synchronicity Key. I remember reading this book about 10 years ago, and I instantly had to pull it up again. But yeah, David Wilcock, he on just Sunday of last week, he was doing a live stream.
Yeah.
He has a YouTube channel. He does live streams. And one of the first things he mentioned was how not only were scientists and researchers disappearing or being killed recently, but also people in the UFO community were starting to disappear and be killed.
Yeah.
And he said, well, this is getting a little scary.
Yeah, or just
And-
even feel threatened. Like,
Yeah.
I've seen that.
He said, yeah, this is getting scary. I hope nothing happens. I just want to say, every day is a gift. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
And then the very next day, David Wilcock's dead of a suicide.
Yeah, an apparent suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that more, but that kind of just made me stop and go, oh my God, we should talk about this right away.
Yeah, it is really interesting. And as details are coming out about that incident, it seems increasingly fishy. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to talking about that. It struck me immediately, obviously a very recognizable name in this community of Fortiana, and you mentioned Ancient Aliens, but it struck me because just not even a week prior to his death, Nick Pope also died, who was for a very long time worked at the UFO desk for the UK Ministry of Defence, and also one of the prominent speakers on Ancient Aliens, has been very much an advocate for UFO disclosure for a very long time. A lot of people will recognize his name. And just earlier this year in January, Eric von Daniken as well passed away. Now, Nick Pope was fighting cancer. That was known, so he was ill. Eric von Daniken was 91 years old, I think.
Yeah, it said
so-
he died of old age.
So those deaths are not necessarily super suspicious,
The timing is...
but the timing is odd that you would have three very prominent members of this community and all Ancient Aliens alumni die within the span of a couple months.
Yeah, and not only that,
And all happening in parallel with this missing site. And I don't know if there's a connection between those series of deaths and missing persons cases, but it does make you wonder exactly what is going on behind the background of all this. Right?
yeah. So I think we should just dive in and talk about some of these people.
Yes.
We don't have time to go into all of them in a huge amount of detail.
No,
or this show would be 4 hours long.
Yeah,
probably.
we could dedicate probably, if we were so inclined, an entire episode to each individual case. Yeah. We just won't have time for that today, so we won't get too granular. We'll keep it high level, but yeah, let's highlight some of the more compelling cases.
So my attention was first drawn to this case with William McCasland.
Yes.
Retired Air Force general. He's 68 years old. On February 27th, 2026, at 10 a.m., we can determine he was at home. He was meeting a repairman at home. The repairman says, yeah, he was there. He came in to fix something in the house. McCasland's wife was at a medical appointment. Now, she returns to the house at 12 p.m. She finds William is no longer there.
Yeah.
His phone is still there. His glasses are still there. His smartwatch, it's all still there. Only thing missing is his hiking boots, his wallet, his .38 revolver was missing. Mm-hmm. And she assumed he went out hiking.
Yeah.
Because he was an avid hiker. A few hours go by. She reports him missing at 3 p.m. There's been no sightings of him since.
Yeah.
So who was this William McCasland? He has a very long and storied career in the Air Force. We won't get into all of it. Let's just say he was a very high level general.
Yeah. And extremely intelligent as well, highly educated. Like, he held a number of degrees. He was involved in a lot of advanced projects. I think you already mentioned he was stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Yeah, so he had a master's in aeronautical engineering. He actually completed his master's at MIT, where he was mentored by a man named Richard Batten, who was actually the designer of the Apollo guidance computers. But through his career, he held very high-level positions, notably at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and at the Pentagon. And he worked in a lot of highly classified programs having to do with GPS systems, space-based laser weapons.
Underline that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he retired in 2013. Now, since his retirement, he's been busy since his retirement. He's worked as the director of this organization called Applied Tech Associates. which is a subsidiary of something called the Blue Halo, which is this giant defense conglomerate which specializes in space warfare, directed energy weapons, missile defenses, and cyber warfare, as well as command and control systems. He was also involved in the UFO disclosure movement.
That's right. He helped Tom DeLonge get his To the Stars Academy panel together and helped form that team, basically.
Yeah, Tom DeLonge, that's not a name I was expecting to pop up in this story. For people that don't know, he was the co-founder and the guitarist for Blink-182.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember it was probably about a decade ago when Tom DeLonge first launched that. And I remember at the time it was met with a lot of skepticism because, of course, yeah, he's a rock star. What is he doing suddenly in this realm? But yeah, when all the information about his organization came out and you started looking at the names attached to it and the people backing him up, William McCaslin being one of them, these are heavy hitters in the military-industrial complex and have really well connected within the Pentagon and would have the classified access, the top secret access.
Yeah, well, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base was the home of Project Blue Book.
That's right. It connects straight back to Roswell.
Yeah.
That is, Wright-Patterson is supposedly where the recovered spacecraft material from Roswell went to be stored and analyzed, right? So, yeah, a lot of interesting connections here. And really his case is where it all starts. But what's so strange about his disappearance is what he left behind. Because, yeah, like you said, he was an avid hiker. Maybe he just befell misfortune. He is older. He's retired now. But he didn't take any of his devices with him. He didn't take his cell phone. He didn't take his smartwatch. He didn't even take his glasses.
Yeah.
Which, if you're going hiking, is rough. It's maybe not rough terrain, but he was living in the Arizona. Is it New Mexico? Albuquerque. So New Mexico, right?
Yeah.
Desert terrain, not a lot of bush and scrub, so not a lot of places where he could actively disappear. And they sent helicopters out. There was a massive search for this guy, right? And I don't know why this isn't bigger news than it is outside of kind of the internet conspiracy circuit. You'd think because this guy holds so much classified knowledge, him being suddenly missing is a massive national security concern, right? How come they're not scouring the entire country for this guy? And how come, helicopters are searching the entire area? Like I said, it's not like there's forest canopy to hide him. They canvassed something like 700 closest neighbors. Nobody had any clue where this guy was.
Yeah, there's been no sighting of him since.
Yeah. But his wife states that he had reason to be scared and concerned, and that she felt, because of reasons that are somewhat vague, that he deliberately did not want to be found. So what changed in this guy's life, as connected as he was, as storied and elaborate as his career history is, that suddenly he's like, I need out, now I need to disappear?
Yeah, it is a mystery.
Big questions, right? Big questions.
But anyway, McCaslin, that's where this story starts getting a lot of mainstream attention.
Yeah.
But he's not the whole story. Because this has been happening to other people in high-level positions for the past couple of years. Yeah. And it's been quietly building in the background. And it kind of took to this point for people starting to draw these connections. We'll talk about a few more. How about Carl Grillmer? This was also earlier this year. Yeah. This was in February of 2026. So, who is Carl Grillmer?
Well, he was 30 years at Caltech.
Yeah.
Leading exoplanet researcher. I believe in the field of spectronomy or spectrography. If I got that right.
He worked at Caltech's Infrared Processing and Analysis Center. Basically, if you've read about NASA detecting some new asteroid, he probably had something to do with it.
That's right.
What he did exactly was he built the algorithms that could detect these very cold, dark objects against the blackness of space. And this technology that he's developed, it's not only used for detecting asteroids, it's also what they use to detect foreign spy satellites. Exact same technology. Anyway, on February 16th of this year, this was in Llano, California, kind of a small rural town in LA County. Sheriff's deputies responding to a 911 call go to his home and find him dead on his front porch from a gunshot wound to the torso. Later that day, this fellow Freddie Snyder, age 29, is picked up after an attempted carjacking and charged with the murder. On its face, it looks like some sort of just random act of violence.
Yeah.
The thing was, this was not Freddie Snyder and Carl Grillmer's first encounter.
Yeah.
2 months earlier, Carl Grillmer had spotted Freddie Snyder on his property with a rifle.
Yeah.
And phoned the police. The police came and picked him up, charged him with trespassing and carrying a loaded firearm.
Yeah, and he just gave some bullshit excuse about
He said he was walking to the post office.
in the wrong direction.
But anyway, he's charged with trespassing and carrying a loaded firearm. And then in February, this was on February 5th, both those charges were mysteriously dropped.
Yeah.
I was not able to find a satisfactory reason for that. It's cited as judicial discretion in the furtherance of justice.
Whatever that's supposed to mean.
Yeah.
It just speaks to the law enforcement's ability to just say, okay, we're not going to deal with this. We don't feel this is important.
Yeah, and 2 weeks later, after these charges are dropped, Freddie Snyder's released. He's back on Carl Grillmer's property.
Yeah.
And murders him. So
And they
obviously
did,
this
they didn't
was
know each other.
Yeah,
right?
obviously this was targeted.
Yeah.
They have not determined a motive, but detectives have said these two men did not know each other.
Yeah.
But it was clearly targeted because it was not the first time Freddie Snyder had attempted to kill Carl Grillmer.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is very weird because it's like, why would you be so determined to need to kill a total stranger that you're supposedly at least making 2 attempts? Why did law enforcement not take the first attempt seriously enough that they just kind of hand waved it off and said, okay, this guy needs to take a firearms course, but otherwise we're not going to pursue this. Even though he lived nearby. I think he just lived like 2 miles down the road or something.
Yeah.
It's odd, right?
Yeah. So, again, to me, this looks like some sort of assassin for hire.
Yeah.
They didn't know each other, but it was obviously targeted. Let's move swiftly onward because we got a lot of names to get through.
Yeah, we got a lot to cover, yeah.
Let's talk about, now this one is less talked about, but I found it to be one of the most fascinating ones. Jacob Pritchard. This was in October of 2025. So on October 25th, 2025, Jacob Pritchard, age 34, murders his wife with a gun. Her name was Jamie, age 33. Murders her at their home in Huber Heights, Ohio. He puts her body in the trunk of his car, and then he drives to nearby Sugar Creek Township, breaks into the apartment of Jamie Gustidas, age 25. He shoots her to death. He then drives to a nearby municipal building, opens the trunk of his car, so, the body of his wife is visible, stands directly in front of a CCTV camera, and shoots himself in the head. Now, all 3 of these people were employees of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Yeah. So there's just so we're connecting the dots of all things. So that connects all 3 of them to that William McCaslin case.
Yeah.
Because they all worked at JPL.
Yeah. So Jacob, the murderer in this
Wright
story,
Patterson, not JPL.
Yeah. Jacob, he was the project manager for the Air Force Research Laboratory Sensor Directorate. Basically developed technology for air and space reconnaissance, surveillance, and electronic warfare. He basically belonged to the same tech pipeline as Carl Grillmer.
Yep.
They were utilizing the technology that Carl Grillmeyer was developing. His wife, Jamie Pritchard, she worked in something called the Air Force Life Cycle Management Center. She was basically a finance specialist. This other woman, Jamie Gastidas, she was an operations research analyst, basically specializing in mathematical modeling for aerospace applications. Now, this investigation is being handled by the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, which typically specializes in espionage and counterintelligence threats, not really police matters.
Yeah.
So that automatically raises a flag that something more is going on here. There was no known motive. They say there's no known motive. There's no confirmed affair happening, because that's where your mind immediately goes. There was some sort of love triangle situation going on between these three.
Right.
No, all their devices, all their correspondence, all their telephone records have been searched. There was no affair happening.
Okay. No indication of anything like that.
There's no known motive. All three of these people were well respected in their jobs on the base. Jacob Pritchard is described as a loving husband and a doting father, and no one would think he was capable of doing what he did.
Yeah.
Anyway, another mystery. Would you like to go into some more of these names? I'm sure you've got a few.
Yeah, I want to rattle off a couple of them just real quick without going into too much detail. One I wanted to hit on was Frank Maywald. I hope I've got that last name right. My notes are just a mess. He worked at JPL, and he worked with NASA and JPL on the Juno missions, actually, which is the orbiter that's currently around Jupiter, and he worked on the subsurface ocean analysis missions of the moons of Jupiter. And I don't have it actually here, whether he's missing or dead. I think he is just missing. Do you have that?
This is Frank Maywald?
Yes.
So he died in 2024, but no cause of death has been published.
Right. Great. Perfect. So let's put a pin in that one, underline it for later. Monica Riza was another big one for me.
Oh, yes, Monica Riza.
Also at JPL. She is just missing, and her disappearance has very much flavors of Missing 411, David Paulides stuff. She was also out hiking with a group of friends. She last seen less than 30 feet away, smiling and waving to a group of friends she was on a hike with. And the next thing they know, they turn around and she's nowhere to be seen. The entire area is searched, scoured. No one can figure out where she went. Just blipped out of existence. Missing.
Yeah, and
very strange.
Yeah, she was the co-inventor of something called Mandalay.
Yes.
She was a materials engineer. And
that's right. Tell me a little bit about Mandalay, because I think there's an important point there.
Well, Mandalay is a nickel-based alloy, and it's used in rocket engines.
Yeah.
Now, the important thing about Mandalay is for a few decades before the invention of Mandalay, the U.S. was reliant on, Russian-built rocket engines to launch basically anything into space.
Yeah.
So this was identified as, a huge national security gap. We have to develop something comparable. So along comes Monica Riza, and she co-invents this material called Mandalay, which they can use to build their own rocket engines. Plugs this huge national security gap just in time for the Russia to basically stop cooperating with the U.S. on this in reaction to the sanctions placed on Russia after the beginning of the Ukraine war.
Yeah. Yeah. Very fascinating stuff. Very So do you have any other ones you want to get into?
Well, just a couple of days after Monica Riza's disappearance, she disappeared on June 22nd, 2025. Just a few days later, June 26th, 2025, 800 miles away, Melissa Cassius, she drives her husband, Mark, to work. They both work at the Los Alamos laboratory. She drops her husband off. She tells him she's driving to, a different site on the base. She doesn't. She goes back home. She tells her daughter that she's forgotten her, security key card. and that she's going to be working from home today, which was a lie because she had already been on the base to drop off her husband and would have needed her security card for that. But she tells her daughter she's working from home today. Later that day, she takes her daughter out for lunch at this nearby cafe.
Yeah.
And she's seen on CCTV footage leaving the cafe alone with a backpack, hiking east towards the Carson National Forest. Hiking into the Carson National Forest. Never seen or heard from again. And she left behind her keys, her purse, her wallet, her personal phone, and her, government-issued work phone.
Yeah.
Both phones had been factory reset. Everything on them cleared. Never been seen or heard from again.
Yeah, so I don't know about you, but I don't see how any rational person doesn't put all these together and start feeling like things are piling up and things are lining up and there's all these connections. Almost all of these people, actually every single one of these people, worked in some way in either nuclear fusion, national defense, space-based, either observation or defense programs, connections to JPL, Los Alamos, MIT, NASA, the Pentagon, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And it's not like this sort of thing doesn't go on. There is a hidden world, the James Bond worlds that none of us hear about most of the time, of espionage between foreign powers. I think immediately about the Marconi deaths from the mid-1980s. Marconi was a defense contractor in the UK, and they did computer systems. They did naval technology. I believe the Stingray torpedo was developed by them, was a big one. And in the mid-1980s, 25 scientists that worked for Marconi all died under strange circumstances. Most were labeled as suicides or misadventure of some kind. Just as an example.
One guy beheaded himself somehow.
That's right. That was a really bizarre one. I don't have his name right in front of me, but yeah, he tied a nylon rope around a tree trunk and then the other end around his own throat, got in his car and floored it until he was decapitated. And in the car, a metal rod was found, supposedly to prop the gas pedal down. And that was ruled a suicide. Another example, one Shani Warren was found in shallow water. Her body was found in shallow water, gagged at the mouth, her feet bound. Suicide. Yeah. Right? These are the kinds of suicides we're talking about. Here, right? And there's 25 of these, all connected.
Yeah.
It was believed, the general vibe I get in researching this, I only worked on the Marconi stuff for one night this week, but the general thing people feel is most likely KGB, because this is all during the Cold War. So it looked like those were targeted assassinations, kind of an attack at the UK defense superstructure. Kind of thing, right? But yeah, it's kind of smacks of this, doesn't it? But like, why now? Why is this all happening now?
Yeah, and like, we just went over a few of these names. It's a big list. How long this list is really depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
Because there's some of these names, people say, well, they're not tied to this. Some say, well, these people are tied to us. So the number of names on this list, it depends who you ask. But let me just rattle off a few more. Won't go into them in huge detail because we don't have time.
Yeah.
We've got Michael David Hicks, JPL scientist, died 2023, no cause disclosed. Frank Maywald, we already talked about, died 2024, no cause released. Monica Reza, we talked about. Anthony Chavez, Los Alamos employee, missing since 2025. Melissa Cassius, we spoke about already. Stephen Garcia, defense contractor, missing since 2025. Nuno Loureiro, MIT nuclear physicist, killed in 2025. I believe that one was labeled a suicide. Jason Thomas, researcher, he disappeared. He disappeared in 2025. Then he was found dead just earlier this year. I believe he was found in a burnt-out car. We've got Amy Eskridge. She worked on experimental propulsion concept anti-gravity technology, died of suicide in 2022. She would be the earliest on this list. Some people argue whether she even belongs on this list.
Yeah.
Anyway, it just goes on and on and on.
Well, certainly some of these cases are more unusual than others, and people keep adding to it now that it's kind of it's making the rounds. The story's making the rounds, so everybody's throwing in their 2 cents. And maybe some of these are mislabeled that don't really belong here, but there's a statistical anomaly at place when you look at the job roles, the career structures. And sure, the argument I keep hearing from people kind of hand waving this away as nothing to see here is that they're all disconnected, and there's a lot of people that work in the defense industry that are connected to classified projects or the sciences of nuclear physics and what have you, and that the deaths aren't necessarily connected. It's just random crime. But that doesn't hold water, because when you actually do the math on that and break it down in any given field, how many murders, missing person cases can you expect to see within a given population within these fields? The numbers don't add up. This is a massive statistical anomaly.
I mean, people die. People die every day.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that work in these industries. But these aren't just deaths or disappearances. They are so unusual.
Yeah.
And they are all clustered around this very short span of time, all having to do with, as you mentioned, nuclear physics, the defense industry,
energy,
the
Department of Energy. We could do a whole episode just on the Department of Energy and their history and their connection to classified projects.
And there's
starting with the Manhattan Project.
There's this broad overarching thing that connects some of them of, some sort of connection to the UFO disclosure movement.
Yes, which has also just been picking up pace incredibly quickly within the past couple of years in that same span of time.
Yeah, and all of this is happening against the backdrop of the President of the United States promising some sort of huge disclosure in the very near future.
Yeah.
Some sort of huge declassifying of documents related to, UFOs or extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
We'll see if anything comes of that. I've got my doubts whether anything will come of that.
And I mean, a lot of people point to that and say it's amazing how the UFO disclosure thing, there's some big announcement, something's right around the corner, right when the government needs a distraction from something else.
Yeah.
Like the Iran war or the Epstein files or whatever it happens to be. It's like whenever they want to redirect attention, they pull out the UFO card, right? And maybe I don't buy that's all that's going on, because the UFO disclosure movement, like I said, has been ramping up hardcore in, say, the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
All starting in 2017 with the Nimitz and the Go Fast videos coming out and the New York Times covering that, right? It's just been ramping up faster and faster this entire time, right?
Yeah.
And it feels like it's getting to a fever pitch. Mm-hmm. So these, and like you said, the connections to these industries of advanced energy, national defense, space-based weapons platforms, and the UFO community is undeniable. Those connections are just there. And it's all happening at the same time. And you mentioned to me before the show, I don't know much about this, but that a similar phenomenon is going on in China as well.
Yeah, there's this whole parallel story in China, very very similar. These Chinese scientists, it starts a little earlier, but kind of some overlap in the time frame here of these Chinese scientists all dying in mysterious or not disclosed circumstances. A little different because these scientists are all connected to, defense research involving autonomous systems and AI.
Mm-hmm.
So I will not be able to pronounce any of these names properly.
Yeah, we understand. Doing your best.
We've got Feng Yang, 38, died 2023, car crash. He was a military AI expert. We've got Zhao Gongyao, Age 51, he was a chemist and materials expert. Died 2023. No cause of death was disclosed. We've got Tang Zhao, 55, founder of the AI company SenseTime. Died in 2023. No disclosed cause of death. Sun Juan, age 45, chief scientist at a company called Magville Tech. It's an AI company. Died 2022. No cause of death released. Zhang Zhoujin, age 62, space expert at something called the Satellite Meteorological Center. Died 2024. I'm just going to keep... all of these have no cause of death that was publicly released.
Yeah.
Fang Daning, hypersonics researcher. Yan Hong, hypersonics researcher. List goes on and on. I won't keep mispronouncing these Chinese names because someone in China is probably listening.
And it's really weird to see that parallel between there. I think you could argue in geopolitics, we still are looking at a world that's very much divided east and west. There is a bit of a culture battle going on, a bit of a world war.
A Cold War.
Yeah. I don't know, it feels pretty hot to me if you look at the news. But but similar phenomenon happening in both east and western spheres. Mm-hmm. Interesting. What's going on there? I forgot.
Are they just killing each other's scientists?
Maybe it's like the Marconi thing, where this is international espionage between superpowers. I want to quickly harken back to the Marconi stuff because there was a connection there that I forgot to mention. I won't take too much time again. On Cobra Mist, have you ever heard the term Cobra Mist?
I have not.
It's a classified project in the UK, partnership between the US Air Force and the British Ministry of Defence on a very advanced over-the-horizon radar installation. And that program has connections to Rendlesham Forest, which is famous for the Rendlesham Forest incident, which is basically the UK Roswell incident. It's one of the biggest UFO encounter incidents in British history, which, again, that's an entire other episode. Basically, everything we mention on this show could be an entire episode on its own.
Yeah, it's a big story.
Yeah,
I had a hard time condensing this into anything resembling coherent notes.
Yeah. So really interesting connections there. Again, we might need to tease that apart and just do a Rendlesham episode down the road at some point. But I do want to move this along. I don't know if the audience can hear it, but Xena is losing her mind downstairs.
Yeah, she's very upset by all of this.
So let's push things along. I want to start talking theories. What do you think is going on here?
Well, I have two theories. Because, you start reading this list of names and you get the sense you're seeing the outline of something. Yeah. You're seeing the outline of some sort of plot. You don't know what it is. You don't know what form it has, but you're seeing an outline there. It made me think of not the Philadelphia experiment, the Manhattan Project.
Yeah.
It made me think of the Manhattan Project because the Manhattan Project was so compartmentalized.
Do we want to pause for a second?
Sure.
Let's deal with Xena. Okay, sorry folks, we just had to pivot a little bit and bring Xena up here. Hopefully she'll chill now. But yeah, you were saying compartmentalized.
Yes, anyway, the Manhattan Project, it was so compartmentalized. Very few people involved in it really understood the full scope of the project. Very few people, the president and, the top scientists actually working on the bomb itself. But, this project had tens of thousands of people involved in it.
Yeah.
None of them knew what they were building. Not even Congress knew. Everyone was surprised when the bomb dropped.
Yeah.
What if some sort of Manhattan Project scale thing is going on?
Mm-hmm. Interesting, yeah.
And
dovetails with my theory.
These people, because occasionally, even in a compartmentalized project, there's going to be low-level people who might start putting the pieces together.
Yeah.
And maybe they're just being silenced. Maybe something crazy and new is being developed that no one really knows the scale of.
Yeah.
And the people that figure it out are just being silenced.
Interesting. No, that dovetails really closely with what I thought. I mean, my impression here, after digging into this a little bit over the past week, is that there is definitely something going on. There's too many coincidences for this not to have some substructure underneath it, a reason for all these things, all these factors to coalesce.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, when I started looking, so this is where my mind went. I need you to tell me what you think about this, or if I'm just completely off the rails.
Okay.
But when I look at the career profiles of all these people and everything going on in the world, I'm trying to imagine for myself. We're in speculation territory here, right? Let's just be clear about that. Mm-hmm. We need a jingle. You need to do your Suno thing and get us a speculation zone jingle so
I'm
people
on it.
know.
Speculation zone. Speculation zone.
But anyway, so I look at the profiles, the career histories of all these people. What could be going on in the background? What could they all be tied to that is maybe on the cusp of coming out in our world? What was our biggest story of last year?
Like our biggest story.
Yeah.
On the show.
Yeah. The biggest thing going on in the world, one of the biggest things going on in the world.
3-Eye Atlas, definitely.
3-Eye Atlas. So that's completely fallen out of the news cycle. People got bored. No one's paying attention to it anymore. But Avi Loeb actually just released another paper on 3-Eye Atlas, comprising all the data that they've collected over the past year since this thing became a sensation in the media. Basically putting all the pieces together and making a really strong argument that the phenomena around 3-Eye Atlas absolutely represents a techno signature.
Okay.
That is an alien spacecraft from outside our solar system. There's... Sorry, Xena. She's being very good. She's at our feet, but she's moaning and groaning because she's not involved in the conversation. So apologies to the audience. Think about the nickel signature I was seeing from 3-Eye Atlas. They're seeing deuterium. Mundaloy.
Nickel-based alloy.
Nickel-based alloy. We're seeing deuterium in the jets.
Antimatter.
Yeah. Fusion-based engine. Nuclear fusion-based power systems. Why would they bring in space-based weapons experts working on energy-based weapons in space? Well, right? Isn't it all coming together? What if alarm bells are ringing, throughout the world, at the highest level, that we've got a visitor, we're about to make first contact. Perhaps they've determined it's hostile or malicious, right? And they need to do something about it. They need to keep certain things secret. They need to control information. So some people need to be eliminated and some people need to be disappeared. Maybe they're not missing or dead. Maybe they're being recruited into some kind of response program, like the Manhattan Project.
Well, maybe it's a bit of both, because some of these people have definitely died.
Yeah. Some of these are for sure murders. We've got bodies and everything. Yeah.
I really like that theory, and that, it's kind of ties in with my second theory on this. Because, like I said, all of this is happening against the backdrop of the President of the United States promising some sort of disclosure happening in the near future.
Yeah.
Right? Now, obviously, when such a release happens, we know from recent experience that whatever is released is going to be very carefully curated.
Yeah.
There is no full transparency. Look at the Epstein files. How long did those take to release? How heavily redacted and curated were those?
Yeah.
It's going to be curated. Whatever, the president has up his sleeve that he's going to release. Maybe there's people out there who are going to poke holes in this very carefully curated release of information. Maybe those are the people that are going to muddy up this story. Maybe those are the people getting eliminated.
Yeah, either because they privately were inclined to speak out on their own, or they were sitting on some vital piece of information that they just can't have getting out in the face of such a disclosure.
Yeah.
Right? We're also being groomed in the media for such a disclosure. Steven Spielberg's about to re-enter the sci-fi with genre for the first time in a while with his new film, which is based on alien disclosure. right? Bob Lazar is suddenly back on the scene because Project Gravatar finally came out. Thank God. It was fantastic, by the way. Have you watched it yet?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
I will
you
go home and watch
absolutely
it
should.
today.
It's a must watch. It was excellent. I can't wait for the VR experience to come out in the fall, but really worth your time. Excellent, excellent documentation of the Bob Lazar story.
Mm-hmm.
Go back and listen to our episode on that. Definitely check out that movie. But all of these things are happening at the same time, right? And I find Bob Lazar's stories now more believable than ever because some of the work that they've done. Right? Obviously, it's the same story that he's been telling since the late 80s, but there's all this veridical evidence that's come out in the past 30, 40 years, right? Oh my God, Xena. She's had a rough couple days, folks. I swear to God, we're not torturing this animal. She had knee surgery just under 2 weeks ago. She's in recovery, and she's starting to get really sick of all the things we're not allowed to let her do. Jump up on furniture and go to the park. So she's a little grumpy the past couple days, but she's getting better. If there's never been a better time to donate to the show, by the way, a really expensive vet bill. You can go to our website and donate. But yeah, I promise we're not hurting Xena. She's just upset with us right now. But yeah, what else? We should probably wrap up for Xena's sake, if nothing else. I think we've just about covered everything we wanted to touch on. Do you have anything left?
I really want to, before we end the show, I really want to loop back to David Wilcock.
Yes.
Because he's an interesting one. You know, when I had heard he had supposedly shot himself.
Yeah.
I immediately remembered back to this book, The Synchronicity Key, which I'd read like 10 years ago. And this
Sorry, I'm going to pause one more time. Just because, she's getting rowdy. Okay, we're back. Hopefully she stays cool long enough to let us wrap this up. You were saying Synchronicity Key.
Yeah,
Take two. You were saying Synchronicity Key.
Yeah, and I'd read this book like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But
okay, let's take her back downstairs. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Take three. Synchronicity Key. Go.
Anyway, I'd read this book probably 10 years ago, but just immediately this one passage jumped out at me. It's weird that I'd remember a passage from a book so specifically that I'd read so long ago, but it just came to my mind. So I had to go grab this book and dig up this passage. He was talking about his college years. And he'd had some trouble as a teenager. He was quite overweight. He was overeating. He was drinking too much. Really wasn't treating himself well. And he had made like this huge effort to get himself into shape, lose a bunch of weight, eat healthier, live healthier. And this brings us to this passage. I'll read it here. 5 years later, in July 1994, I was a college student and was working on a music album with my best friend Jude in his apartment. I was thin and moderately athletic, and I had a year and a half of clean time, but I'd never had a girlfriend. I still didn't have the courage to ask a girl out on a date after so many years of threats, humiliation, and physical injuries from other kids. I was struggling to fall asleep as I lay there on the floor on a cold, dirty air mattress, staring at the ceiling. Jude was sleeping off to my right, 2 feet above the ground, in his normal bed. Jude's apartment was far too small for me to have a separate room to sleep in, as his cousin Ruben was crashed out on the couch in the other room. As I lay there, I was having a weird waking dream. This monstrous, exaggerated fat man, an obvious caricature of how I used to look, was chasing me, trying to kill me. I had a gun in my belt as I ran. I knew I could shoot this man and put an end to my misery, once and for all, but for some reason I wouldn't do it. I didn't want to hurt him, even though he was definitely trying to hurt me. This horrible battle raged on, and I ran for all I was worth as I faded in and out of consciousness. Suddenly, Jude's sleeping body turned in the bed next to me, and in an agitated, distant voice, he said, "Shoot him, just shoot him, 2 bullets. And then he goes on kind of a long monologue about the implications of this supposedly shared dream him and his friend Jude had about him essentially shooting himself with 2 bullets, apparently. And it just made me think of that passage, and last night I was actually listening to some stuff on David Wilcock's death. Actually, I listened to a stream that his friend Jude, who's referenced in this story, actually did, kind of talking about his thoughts on David Wilcock's death and his own theories on it. But also what I listened to was the kind of the audio from the dispatcher talking to the first responders.
Yeah.
Now, David Wilcock supposedly killed himself with a, self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. But there was actually 2 shots fired that day. I learned listening to the audio. There was 2 shots, 2 bullets.
Yeah, hold on. 2 shots fired in a suicide. How does that work? Please
Well,
unpack that.
apparently, what they're saying is, as David Wilcock was standing there in front of his home, as the first responders arrived, he fired a test shot.
A test shot.
He fired a test shot. Because you don't actually hear any of David's voice in any audio that's been released, but you can hear the first responders and the dispatcher kind of narrating this situation.
Yeah.
And they say, it looks like he fired a test shot, but he's still there with the gun to his head.
Yeah.
Which on its own just seems really unusual.
That's bizarre. Why would you take a test shot? Right?
Yeah.
Although if maybe someone was attacking him, maybe he was trying to defend himself.
Yeah.
And this wasn't a suicide. I'm again speculating, but 2 shots?
Yeah. And I should say David Wilcock, he was a complicated man.
Yeah.
Very smart man. I've read this book. It is dense.
Yeah.
The man clearly knew a lot about history.
Yeah.
Definitely. The whole premise of this book is that history goes in cycles. Mm-hmm. And synchronicities or meaningful coincidences are what happens when we are transitioning from one cycle to another.
Yeah.
Something significant is happening in this cycle, and that's where you
Right.
see these meaningful coincidences crop up. That's the whole premise of this book, but it's very well researched. He goes into a lot of history.
What a lot of people in that New Age community are screaming right now is that we're in a massive time of transition. And that's why everything's so crazy right now. Whatever you might think about that. And like you said at the beginning of the episode, I can't say that I was ever the biggest fan of David Wilcock's work. He was just a little too far out there for my taste. But that's not to disparage him as a human being, and I feel sorry for him and his family that they're going through this. I saw his wife made a social media post about his passing the other day that I read. That was just absolutely heartbreaking, and that goes for everybody we've discussed today. It's important I think to just take note and recognition. We talk a lot about a lot of crazy stuff on the show, a lot of bizarre theories. And that's the point of this show. We're going to indulge in that. But that's not to disrespect or take anything away from the actual human beings that are being affected by what's happening here. And if anything, I think that's important. Why we should discuss it, take it seriously, and not hand wave things away. Because if there is something going on here, if there is something behind all this, which to me, my personal opinion, feels like there is something happening here, those people deserve that level of justice and recognition that if they died for something, and we all need to know what it was.
Yeah.
And have an understanding of why this had to happen.
Yeah, like David Wilcock, regardless of what happened to him, whether it was actually a suicide because he was under an enormous amount of personal pressure and hadn't had the nicest few days. Actually, his biographer and the co-author of this autobiographical book he was writing, named Winfrey, he had passed away just two days prior. So he was not having a good time. He was under a lot of financial strain. Definitely a lot going on, but whether he actually did commit suicide or whether there was something else going on, this was a tragedy. Yeah. I mean, he's a controversial figure for his beliefs and a lot of what he said, but from all accounts, he was a genuinely warm individual, loved by many people.
Yes.
And he would be the first to say Yes, Zena, I know. He would be the first to say,
Okay, I know.
and he said so in the past, that if he should commit suicide one day, it should be investigated.
Yeah. Okay, this has got to be brutal for the audience to listen to. Let's take pity on this poor animal and really wrap this up.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap this up. Thank you, Zena, for your contributions. I just want to ask everyone, if you've stuck with us through this rocky production today, thank you so much. Please support the show. We need your support more than ever these days because it appears we are actively being suppressed by somebody in power. And those are not exaggerated claims. I won't take forever to explain it all, but we're definitely seeing some hostility towards our channel and the numbers from people that have the power to do so. So please support us. Help us out. We need our fan base to mobilize. Write a comment. That's the biggest thing that helps our videos get pushed out. Hit the like button. Leave us a 5-star review if you're listening on a audio only platform. We really need the help. And we're going to put it there and maybe get Zena a treat. Thanks.
Yes.
Thanks, Zena, for all your help today.
Yes.
I hope everyone's doing great. I'm sorry for the rough audio, but have a great weekend, and we'll see you on the next episode. Good night.
Good night.